Well, China has reacted with antipathy to Australia's decision not to send officials to the Beijing Winter Olympics, saying nobody cares if they attend. The decision was expected after the US announced it was going to take a stand. And since then, the UK and Canada have done the same. Joining me live now is our US contributor, Michael Ware. Michael, good to see you. What do you make of China's reaction?
Well, it's to be expected, really, isn't it? I mean, they can't let these kind of rebuffs go unanswered. And as you say, just a few hours ago, the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, added Canada to the diplomatic boycotts of the Winter Olympics. And let's remember, Canada's had a fraught relationship with China over the last few years, involving what we could call hostage diplomacy. That involved the detention of Canadian businessmen. So look, we now have 4 Western democracies who are boycotting. China has to do something about that. Not sure that it can do much, but a number of its ambassadors around the world have been tweeting in the last 24 hours, attacking President Biden's Summit for Democracy that's happening here in the States tomorrow and on Friday. And they're calling that summit a so-called democratic summit. And they've also described it as being anti-democratic. In fact, China claims it's a democracy and America shouldn't be the one to decide who is and who is not a democracy. So look, China can't let these boycotts go unanswered. The question is this the beginning of a pile-on of other nations joining this boycott? And there, the real issue is, what will Europe do? We're waiting to see. The new German Chancellor dodged 3 sets of questions about whether Germany was going to boycott. We haven't heard yet from France, but that could really tilt the balance globally in terms of those who are rebuffing China diplomatically. And there's one other thing too. For the optics for China, for these Olympics, it's meant to be a showcase. Diplomatic boycotts certainly hurt the message that they're trying to give out with their hosting of these Olympics. But there's an unspoken risk that people don't seem to be addressing right now, and that's the very real risk of athletes making individual protests. And there's nothing China would be able to do to prevent that. And my mind goes back to the 1968 Olympics in Mexico, where 2 Black American medal winners raised their fists in defiance about human rights back home in the United States. That sort of thing could happen in China at these Olympics. And like I said, there's nothing China can do to control that. And that would be a nightmare scenario for them.
Yeah, there was an Aussie on the dais as well during that particular protest. So there can be political protests that are not forewarned but have such a huge impact. Michael, this week we've also been watching Joe Biden and his international diplomacy, his foreign policy on display with his meeting with Vladimir Putin. It all comes down to the Ukraine. I think the world was watching how far Biden was willing to go with China when it comes to with Russia, I should say, when it comes to the Ukraine, because this could also be a bit of a signal to what the US does if, tension flared between Taiwan and China.
Oh, look, there's very clear connections or comparisons that can be made between the issues with Ukraine and the issues with Taiwan. So yes, it very much is in the Americans' interest to present a strong front on either one of those issues to maintain a steadfast front on both of those issues. And it's curious. In his teleconference with the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, President Biden laid out as he said, very clearly what the costs to Russia would be if they did invade Ukraine. Well, coincidentally, earlier this week, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, gave a pretty key speech on American strategic policy in the Pacific with regard to China. And there, the American Secretary of Defense also tried to message as strongly as possible to Beijing the costs of any aggression towards Taiwan or anyone else. He actually said he wanted to highlight the folly and the price of such aggression. So it's very astute of you to link these two hotspots, Ukraine and Taiwan, and what has to be the consistency of America's message on both.
Indeed. Michael, always great to talk to you. Thanks for navigating us through that this morning. Appreciate it.